I need to share the screen. Okay, so if you go here, this is what I'm playing around for this class. But we can create a new activity. Where is it? Activity. And we can choose that this is a fragment activity. Let's give it a try. Where is it? Okay. So you see, we need to give the name of the layout for the activity and the layout for the fragment. So let's try. I don't like main activity tool, but like we can my fragmented activity. Okay. So if you do these, let's just give a quick look at the code to see what happens. Oh boy. So let's go into the fragmented activity. Where did it go? Here. Okay. Okay. So if we look at these, sorry, my screen is very bright. What happens? That we set the content view, and then we essentially get to the support fragment manager, and we add the fragment here somehow. Okay. And you see that here there is a public static placeholder fragment extends fragment. So here is essentially there is on create view and the various methods, and here is essentially all the methods of the fragment that will be there. Okay. Now I don't plan to go into these in detail, but we are talking about things such as deprecated. Okay. I think there was a point, I think it was 1 year ago or two, in which essentially Google was shoving fragments down our throats. So whenever you started something and whenever you look for documentation, it would only tell you how to do things in fragments, because that was now supposed to be the real way of doing things. Okay, and evidently they backtracked, because I'm happy to see that in Android Studio, it's not based all on fragments anymore. You can create simple activities. At one point, if you did anything, you wanted to create a fragment activity. I think this is one of these oscillations of software engineering, right? On the one hand, you wanted to bring the commonality in a single place. On the other hand, you want to make things simple. And the two are in contrast, right? Because when you do a fragment activity, essentially, you have all these, fluff of, on create, on stop, on these, initialize, do this and do that, just as bookkeeping, multiplied by 2, no? Because you have to do it for the activity and for the fragment. And you must also pay attention that the two don't go out of sync, obviously. I mean, there are some helpers, but if the activity stops, you need the fragment needs to stop, and etc., etc. So you need to weave them together in the right way. Okay, so it does create complication. So I'm happy to see, essentially, for this class in which we want to keep things a little bit simpler, that we are not forced to use fragments for everything anymore. Okay, we can just use plain activities. But I want to tell you that fragments exist. Fragments, once you get around the stomachache of essentially keeping around the bookkeeping code, are good for many things, because they do enable you to isolate behavior in a common component. Okay. Fragments are also bad because one of the things that you notice with Android is that often you say, now it's so beautiful, with this dialogue that we have for public and private messages, I was able to isolate it into this object, and now I reuse it, and I feel so proud of my software engineering skills. And then, somebody comes and tells you, hey, Luca, but when I post a private message, I really want it to look a little bit different. I want this thingy there to be bigger. I want the thingy there. I want a color indicator there that tells me whether the weather is beautiful, and I want yet another thing on the side. And so, then you bang your head on the wall, and essentially you have to put a lot of if-then else's and say, oh, if I actually was told from the private dialogue, then I should behave like this. So, I don't know. In the end, sometimes doing the activities one by one and reusing a little bit of code is not always so terrible, okay? It's hard because you put so much effort in tailoring exactly the view in Android to what you want to see. that sometimes, you know, these opportunity for reuse is more imaginary than real sometimes. That's at least my has been my experience. Okay, so how did I start saying talking about fragments? Because we were talking about scrollable views and the like, and deprecated things. Yeah, let me just say this and then I come to your question. Another thing of deprecation we will see it today when we talk about settings. You will see that actually Android Studio automatically gives for us a settings activity which is full of deprecated statements. So yeah, I don't know what to say.
It's more like a general question, but is this like this particular file structure? Is it the only way to structure an app? Or are there multiple ways to actually do a file structure? Like, I can envision like packaging up your activities and your Java code together into like a component that you can then plug and paste into different apps that you're using, as opposed to.
So if an app is larger, okay, you can use multiple packages for the app, okay, and this is done. Now, I have to tell you, there is not a fantastically incredible advantage in doing that. The advantage is basically that if you have more than, say, a dozen Java files, it's not so pleasant to navigate among 60 Java files. So once it becomes very large, I don't know, you know, I helped some people write the first version of an app. When I left it, there were maybe, you know, 10 files, 10.java files. As those files multiplied, people essentially decided that even each activity or each pair of activities was a complicated enough thing that, you know, it ballooned to some 20 files. So they essentially every pair of related activities was its own package, simply so that, you know, you knew which files were where, and to have a more reasonable naming scheme. But I haven't seen a lot of this borrowing in which you take one of your apps and you know, you take one of these things and move
a component straight out of one and put it into the other.
I don't know why, but
it seems like it would be.
It seems it would be, right? And so I think people do it by hand, but you know, I cut and paste code from my various pieces of work, right? But it's not a formal unit of reuse, as far as I see.
I think it would play well with like yes.
Yeah, no, it would be good. So I don't know why it's not done in that way. I think, you know, part of the problem is that in an app, this is just only my experience, but I'm not a master at reuse in the, you know, artful way. In an app, you really tailor things. You tie them together in exactly the right way, so that when you press back, you go exactly in the right place, etc., etc. So after you sort of smooth and file your app so much, if you take a piece of it and you move it in another app, that gives you a good starting point, but not really a good unit of reuse. It gives a starting point, but then you have to, you know, again, sort of polish it and adjust it to exactly the way you like. Yeah. So that's unfortunately what I see. Okay, so sorry. Let me see what I wanted to do today. So I have something on menus, something on intents and sharing. I want to finish something on intents. So so shared preferences, we have seen them. So these are implicit intents. So these are these intents that can have. So you have two types of intents. You have an intent in which you say intent is equal to new intent of this, comma, other activity dot class. This builds an intent that is specifically used to go from this activity to another one of which you specify exactly the class. Okay, and then you say start activity of that intent, and this starts the other activity. This is how you go back and forth between activities in the same app. Okay. Now, if you instead have implicit, if you instead want to do something, but you don't want to do it yourself and you want to recycle somebody else to do it, if you can actually activate portions of other activities, and you do this with the implicit intents. These are a very useful way to say share, take photos, send messages, place phone calls, browse the web, do all these kind of things that you want to be done, but in other apps and not necessarily yours. This is one of the ways in which Android is superior essentially to iOS by a long shot. In iOS, the integration between the various apps is built into the phone. So essentially, Apple decides what are the hooks and who is able to talk to whom, and if it's not decided by Apple, you cannot do it. For example, there are some default apps. I think I don't have an iPhone, but I think that on iPhone, if you bring up the default map app, it has to be Apple Maps. You cannot have Google Maps come up as default. Instead, Android is completely agnostic. Okay, you can send an intent that has some parameters in it, and everybody who can respond to it will raise their hand, and you will have a choice of what will what application to use in order to do that. Okay, so to do that, these implicit intents have various pieces to them. They have an action. An action is a set of string constants basically, but it tells you what you want to do. For example, there is an action send. When you share, you are using action send. And there are various actions. I don't remember them by heart, okay, but you can go read the list and you can find out what are the various actions. Now, if you say that you want to send, not every app can send every type of content. So you specify the data, a URI. A URI is, well, you know what a URL is. A URI is similar, except that a file can also be a URI. A URI is like a URL more general, okay? It can be based, it's generally a resource descriptor, and so it can also be a file, so you can encode what you want there. So you give the data, and optionally you can say the category, the type, the MIME type. For example, this is an application PDF, if you like, or application or image JPEG or whatever. And you can also give extra information. There are some ways of sharing that accept extra information. So the idea is this: you build your intent, you add all this information in the proper way. You add the type, the components, etc. And then you send it off, and any app that can respond to it will respond. Sorry, I had some mode in which. Oh, okay. So here are some examples of actions. Action view. These can be used, for example, if the content is contacts. This can have you view a particular contact. Okay. But I believe that action view, if the content is a URL, will bring the browser will respond to it. Okay. So this is generally for viewing content. And then depending on the type of content that you actually want to view, the applications that know how to deal with that content will propose to let you view it, okay? Action dial, action edit for contacts. So these are just some of the examples, okay? There is a way to do an intent to take a photo, to take a movie. And when you take a photo of a movie, what happens is that the camera app or one of your camera apps will open, and then you will get back as a result the URI of the file where the image or movie was stored. Okay, so it's an easy way to enable any app to take photos without actually having to embed the camera code directly inside your app. Okay, so this is an example. Okay, see, this is how you dial a number. Oh, I think I should use the larger presentation mode. Okay, so and there is a similar action if you want to send SMSs, etc. Okay, so there are two ways of doing things when you start an activity. You can say, from A you start activity B. At this point, there is a B, B gets the control, and as I told you last time, B is on top of the stack on top of A, right? Then B can in turn do a lot of other stuff. When that other stuff on top of B is removed in the stack and you press the back button, B goes away, and A is on top again. Okay, and so you're back at A. But per se, A is not really notified of when you are back. Yes, it will execute a method that is called on resume, right? When it's working again. But you don't really know, you cannot really distinguish between two cases. You cannot, so suppose that I start an intent to do some stuff. You cannot distinguish between the case in which this stuff completed and I'm back at my original intent, at my original A, because this completed and I'm done. Say I wanted to take a photo and now I have my photo. And the other case in which the user simply shut off the phone, rebooted it, and they started it again. And in both cases, on resume is executed, right? So this means if I just say execute this other activity, I'm not really told when that activity finishes, because it's considered to be essentially not my business to know. Okay. When I execute again, I will execute my on start and on resume again, but I'm not notified of the destiny of the activities I launch with a start intent, okay? So instead, if I want to start an activity because I want something back from that activity, then I need to use a slightly different way, okay? I need to start the activity for the result. And in that case, I will be notified of the result. So the trick is this. So there is this small point, imagine that you can start any number of activities for result, even of the same class, right? For example, I may want you to view a couple of web pages. Okay, this is not for result. But I may want you to do, I don't know, to edit two pieces of data or to do two things. So when I started these activities, I have to know which is which. And so in order to know which is which, I have to invent a constant integer that I associate with each request to be able to know when it comes back, which one is it that came back, okay? It's like a bookkeeping thing. You need to tag your requests to be able to know which one completes. So you create a tag, okay? Then you create an intent, and you say intent from this to my other activity class. And then instead of saying start activity, you say start activity for result, intent, and you give also the tag, okay? So this starts it in a slightly different way. Okay, so this is another example. Fine, but I want to show you what happens when you come back. So in the other activity, you may want to give some result back to the caller. Okay, that's why you use a start activity for result. For example, this is the way you do to take a photo, right? You start and the camera. You start for result the activity of taking a picture. Okay, and so if you are in the second activity and you need to return a result, how do you do it? I pretend here to attach to a button listener the code that returns a result to the first activity, just to give you an example, okay? But the interesting code is the one in blue. So I say intent result is equal to new intent. So I prepare the result inside an intent, okay? Then I put a couple of extras, which is, this is an example from a video game, from a book I used to use for the class. I put a couple of results inside my intent that I'm going to use to return information. And then I say set result, okay, result, and I finish, okay? By the way, finish is a useful statement to know. When you call finish inside an activity, what you do is this. You essentially commit suicide inside. The activity commits suicide and is popped off the stack, and whatever was below gets controlled. Okay? So this is not. This is actually something that that one does not incredibly rarely. A typical way which I've used often is the following. Sometimes I really want to take. There are two ways of using the return button. One is not to do anything, and the return button will simply copy off the stack and show what was below. Okay. Another case is the one in which you need to do something special with the return button because you want to go to some special place. Maybe I should include such an example at some point in this class. Okay, so maybe I should play with it a bit today. Okay, but if you do that, what can you do? There is a way to override the return method, and what you can say is this: you can launch an intent to start some other activity, and then you can execute finish. In this way, your current activity will be popped off the stack and will no longer exist, which is a sort of behavior that you expect when you press the back button. You know, you assume that the current activity is going to be closed. Okay, so you can do that. But essentially, this is what this is doing. Okay, this is setting the result, and then it's deleting itself. It's terminating, so that the result will be passed back. Yes.
Okay, so when you're saying put extra, is that data that you want to be returned from your intent, or that you're passing into your intent?
No, this is the activity that is called in order to produce a result. I must return the result to the caller, and so I pick the result, an intent that is called result to be passed back, because intents are this way of passing the information between activities, both from the start, from the one that is activating to the one that gets started, and also from the one that got started to the one that called it in order to return the result.
So put extra is the information you're trying to get out of your intent result.
This put extra is what you're trying to get back to whoever called you.
So is input correct? That's just a value that you assign to it?
Sorry?
So,
is input correct? These are constants, okay? Because when you do put extra, you must, the format of put extra is this. It has a string tag, and then it has a field that can be of various symbol types, like string, boolean, floating point, and perhaps some other one. I don't remember, okay?
and is input correct the variable inside your other activity?
It essentially needs to be a constant that is shared between the two activities, because it's a tag. And so in one activity, I say put this input correct inside associated with the tag is input correct, which is a string tag. Okay? And in the other activity, I will have to fish it out using that same tag name. So the way I would write this code, these are very good questions, by the way. The way I would write the code is to have a file that is called constants.java, in which I put all the definition of my global constants. Okay, and then it's a class with some static variables defined inside it, basically. And so instead of using is input correct, I would say something like constants.is input correct in both activities, because you are exactly right that this tag is input correct. It needs to be shared between the two activities. Okay. So in fact, if we go now at the next slide, and then I can come back to this if you like. But once we put these two informations in, is input correct and selected pistol and result okay, and this result, to fish it out. Okay, so this is how you fish it out. You have on activity result. So as I told you, when you start an activity with start intent, you are not notified of the destiny of what you started. But if you start an activity with a start activity for result, you are notified when that activity you started will finish. Okay? And the way you are notified is that this on activity result handler is called. And it's called with 3 parameters. It tells you the request code. You remember that when I created the activity for a result, I had a request code set here. Sorry. Oh, sorry. sorry, this moves when I do. So this is my request, okay? This my request is the request code, okay? And it's to be able to tell what came back, okay? So when it comes back, this is the request code. This is the integer tag that tells you which call is the one that is coming back to you. This is the result code. This one result code is basically, you know, everybody only uses two results code. Let's see, result okay and result fail or something like that. Okay, you essentially want to know if this is true or if this is fail for whatever reason. Okay, and then it gives you the intent that contains what the other activity is trying to return to you. So if you allow me going back one slide, two slides actually, you see here in blue, we are filling up the intent that we want to pass back to whoever called us, right? And here, we get this intent in this data. And so once you get this notification that one of the things you called came back, what you do is this. You say switch request code. The reason you do a switch on request code is that you may have called many activities for result in theory. In practice, this rarely happens. But in theory, you can call multiple things for result, and then you have to wait on which one of them comes back. They come back asynchronously. So when one of them comes back, you have to say, hey, which one is it? This one, and you say, oh, okay. If this was this activity that came back, if the result code is successful, then I get my URI horse, and then I get this is input correct. I get the selected pistol, and I fish all the data out of the intent. Okay. Yes.
Are we sure the case is
I'm sure the case is
case sure selected you want open brace? Are we sure that's correct?
No, I think I had pasted it from some example, so we need to try to see whether it works. But I don't see why. Why not? Actually, I think it works. Yeah. I mean, we may not need the parentheses around. No, but there is. I don't know. Maybe we need the parentheses around the case. Eh? Sorry.
We do need to put about
Does it really matter right now anyway? As long as we get the general idea of what's happening.
Yeah. But no, but I think in fact what's missing is that there is another brace missing here. But I think the other brace is somewhere around here. By the way. Okay. So because this closes the if, this is inside the break, and so what I think I would need in order for this code fragment to be complete is another brace after the break that closes this one, right? And now you can ask which braces are needed. Well, I don't know. I think braces are there also for clarity, not only because they are needed. Okay, so it's a matter of style at some point. But I think this is correct code. Okay. Yeah, I'm always annoyed that I think it's always a silly point about C, C++, Java that they need around parentheses around conditionals. It's just silly. I mean, you don't need around parentheses around statements. So why would you need them around conditionals? You don't need to say x is equal to open y plus 1 closed. And so why should you put a parenthesis? It's just because of outdated compiler technology. Okay, there, my controversial statements. Okay, but so this is how you pass information back and forth. So I think the general idea is this: activities live in very different process spaces. So you cannot simply say they can live in entirely different processes. You think, hey, why can't I pass information back and forth using variables? Well, because Android built a general mechanism that can work not only within your app, but also across apps and across processes. So you have to essentially invent a mechanism from communication that is able to cross process boundaries. Okay. to start activities and return the result, this object that can cross process boundaries is an intent. Okay? And so, if you start an activity for goodbye, so to say, you create your intent, you started the activity with that intent, and you are done with it. If you started the activity but you want something back, then you need to do two small additional things. You need to tag the request with an integer so that you know what it is that comes back. And the activity that wants to return a result to you needs to create an intent. It's a strange idea, I know, because it's an intent that instead of going forward, it goes backwards, okay? But it needs to create an intent, put information into that, and say set result of that intent in order to be able to give it back to you when it will finish, okay? So these are these are the sort of the two things at high level to remember. You communicate only with intents, and if you need information back, you do start activity for result, and even the back passing of the information happens through an intent. Okay, so at the top level, these are the things to remember essentially. Okay. Any questions on these? Then I want to play a little bit with these things, but for, yeah.
Can you just reiterate like why we do this tab, that user tab?
The integer tag is because for my activity, I can ask multiple things to happen. For example, I can say that I want to take a picture, and also there are some activities that just do stuff without necessarily do user interaction. But you know, I never can need it. Okay, normally I only need to do one thing at a time. But there is this scenario that I'm sure happens, but I've never been into, where you need to do two things. And so when you return, when they finish, how do you know which one is finished? Because the problem is that once you get the intent, you need to do like a get boolean extra, get straight, and you need to fish out different information out of the intent. So you need to know which is which that you call. I mean, you don't have to discover in a normal programming language, because a normal programming language is not asynchronous, right? When you call a function, it returns in the same place where you call it. Here, it's not the case. You know, you can send you can start activity for results in many places in your activity. They all come back in this one single handler, all of them. So you need to know which one is which. Does this clarify?
Basically, you can figure out what data you're.
Yeah, yeah. And it's because this handler is a single one. These public void on activity result, you know, there is a single one for each activity of this handler. So everything you ever launch for result from that activity will all come back there. Even so, let me give you a realistic example. Actually, now I get into one. Suppose that I'm doing a variation of homework 3, in which aside from sending you messages, I can also send you pictures or movies. Okay? How would I do it? Well, it's not so hard to do actually. I would put some buttons, you know, with a camera and a movie camera. And when you press the button for a camera, I would, you know, call for result the activity that takes a picture. If you press the movie button, I would call for result the activity that took a movie. Okay, that takes a movie. Okay, so I do only one of them at a time. But I potentially can do two things, and they will return to me two slightly different objects. Okay, now I will still have a single on activity result handler, and I need to know what's it that I'm getting back of these various things that I could have launched. Is it a photo? Is it a movie? Is it whatever else? No, and so I need to know it in order to do the right thing. And the way you would complete the code, actually this sounds kind of like a homework or something like that. I'm not sure I will give it this way, okay? But if you had to really do it, what would you do? Well, when you get the intent back, now at this point you have the file of the photo. There is a not so difficult way to take a file on the photo and attach it to your HTTP request. And so you upload it to the server and you're done with it. Not very hard. Okay? I mean, to do it well is harder, right? Because to do it well, you have to put some other steps. That is, you take the photo, you get back the file, fine. Now you have to compute a small icon. You need to put the icon in a visually appealing way attached to the message, like you do in Gmail or in SMS when you attach images. So that when the user presses send, the user has the idea that actually he's sending not only the message, but also the picture, right? So as usual, to do it well is a little bit harder. but the basics is not so hard. Okay. Okay.
So that's how you get data out of the results of your intent once it's completed.
Yes.
That's how you get the data out.
Yes.
How do you put data in? For example, in the homework assignment number 3 that we're working on, we have to set up a situation where.
Yes, you can do the same. So suppose I'm actually doing activity and you have a private dialogue activity. When I first click on some of these things, what I do is that I create an intent, I attach an extra that says, you want to chat with this user ID, and then I pass it to the intent view. You say get intent, you look at the extra that says with whom you want to chat, and you give the messages for that person.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what we have to do.
So handling results and handling input. It's
both done with intents, yes. Because
it's essentially the same thing. You're basically putting in the extras and you're fishing them out.
Yes.
And because they're shared, it's.
Yes, exactly. And you do it this way because, as I mentioned, the intents can cross process boundaries. Okay, and I mean that's what they were designed for. Actually, I will.
By the way.
Actually, let me do an example now, and then go to the other part later. So we did the last time this application that momentarily crashed, but it crashed for a very an interesting reason. I don't remember anymore, but it was some stupid string conversion. But here is it. Okay. So now I added this other fragment, etc. But what I did the last time, if I remember, is this. I want to see if it's still here. Hey, no, I removed. Did I remove it? Oh. One second, sorry. Okay, I had multiple branches, okay, and I was in the wrong one. Let's wait a moment until this builds, okay? Okay, so this was it. So this is an example of that I wanted to use for homework as a header for homework 3. So what I wanted to do is the following very simple thing. Okay, there is a list view of results we get from the server. Okay, and I wanted that when you touch one element of the list view, you send an intent to another process, to another activity. I'm sorry, and the other activity displays the index of the list of the messaging activity. That's all, very simple, okay? So this obviously is a building block that is useful for you in homework 3, because there you need to be able to touch a message and go to the other activity and saying which user you are talking to. So in this case, we pass an integer. You may want to pass a string or something else, but the idea is very similar, as you can imagine, okay? So how do you do this? Well, I do the following, okay? This B is my button, okay? And I say, is the button in the list views. There is one of these buttons for each message. And this is not a very elegant solution. Instead of attaching stuff to the button, you can just attach it to the whole list element, okay? That would be much better in the homework, but this is not the point I'm trying to make here. Here my point is simply this, that in some click listener, in any click listener you want, I'm doing the following, okay? I create an intent to share it. Okay. So when you click on the button, I share it. This we saw it last time, right? Instead, when I click on the whole list element, I'm doing this, and this is what I failed the last time, but for a very silly reason, and then I fixed it. So when you click on the whole list position, you do the following. You create an intent that goes to the other activity that I called message activity, okay? Then I put an extra that I call, extras that are associated with tags. And in this case, out of laziness, instead of defining a constant, I just, use the tag by using a string, okay? So I add an extra associated with the string idx, and this will be an integer that is idx, okay, which is the value of the tag of the list element. So I'm using this trick essentially. I'm tagging every list element with its integer index, okay? And then when you click on a list element, I fish out the tag and I pass it to the other activity via the intent, okay? So is this clear? This is quite important, these few lines here. They're quite elementary, but they're very important. I'm essentially simply building an intent and adding some extra information to it, and then starting an activity based on this intent. Now, the other activity will want to get started. This happens automatically. And then it will want to say, hey, who is the intent that created me, please? And it will want to fish out this extra information out of that intent. That is what needs to happen, okay?
Just to clarification, on like you said, like is it essentially just like a lambda function that you're putting into?
Yeah, this V thingy is something that I'm also not used to, because it's not really, but it's like this is the reality. It's Android Studio, moving to a new syntax for Java that I actually don't know.
Is it like,
I don't know about this new syntax. It takes me by surprise, but we have a Java expert.
It's just a new feature in Java, so you can actually pass functions you don't have to actually project. So it's just a lambda.
yeah. But doesn't that sort of get away from like what Java is supposed to be?
Yeah, they kind of.
Yeah, it's probably because Java supposed to be creates a lot of verbosity.
Yeah.
But this gets out of the type system because V is not typed. That is a real problem. Yeah. So they throw out having first order object functions is great. Having functions as real entities is great. But this doesn't mean that you have to give away the typing. They are two separate concepts. They bundled it into one, I guess.
Well, you're not really giving away the typing, right?
Well, because if you use the shorter syntax that I don't know how to obtain again, I think it's here. How do you know the type of V? In this case, it's just syntactic sugar. But otherwise, there are better languages. I used to write a lot of code in OCaml. It's a language I love. Okay, it has some advantages and some drawback. The advantages is that it's strongly typed. It's both functional and object-oriented, depending on how you want to use it. It's essentially as efficient as C once it's compiled. It uses the most unbelievable tricks in order to do garbage collection. Every integer is kept in memory multiplied by 2, so that the lowest bit is always 0. Because every pointer instead has a 1 as a lowest bit. In this way, they know which one is an integer, which one is a pointer, and they can do extreme magic with garbage collection. Now, if you do x plus y, actually, no, sorry, integers are always odd. They represent integer plus 1. So if you do x plus y, what you need to do is that you have to do x plus y minus 1 in the processor, because you have one extra 1 that you need to remove. So this seems crazy, right? But in practice, it's the most incredibly efficient thingy that I've ever used. And it's absolutely beautiful. The only drawback is that once I wrote a very large system in it, basically, this was Wikitrust, a system for reputation on the Wikipedia. And since nobody knows OCaml, everybody that wanted to use it were between sociologists, linguists, soft computer scientists, so to say. And so, nobody ever wanted to touch the code. Or Camel just blew their minds. I mean, it blows many people's minds if you're not used to it, I guess. But so yeah, there are better languages, than Java. But the power of a language in the end is given by the power of the platform and the libraries as well, or even more than the language itself. So in the end, that's why people use it. Anyway, close parenthesis. Okay, so fine. When you click on the view, this new view, this is exactly how you will have to do for the homework. Okay, this new view is what I create in the list view. Okay, when you click on it, I create an intent, I put an extra, and I start the other activity. Now let's look at to see what I do in the other activity. It's called message activity. Let's see what we do here. What we do here is this. There is an on create. It's your choice whether to do things in on create or on resume. I don't think it really matters much. I decided to do them in on resume. And in on resume, I do this. I fish out my start intent. To know who created you, you can do get intent. Okay, so the reality is a little bit more complex. The reality, if you really want to know the dirty truth, is the following: that get intent, if you call it in on-create, tells you the intent who created you. But there are cases in which you can get multiple intents and not be created each time. You know that intents can have these flags, right? So, for example, you can create activity B with a flag that says, oh, and if B already exists, don't create another copy. In that case, you may be getting multiple intents and the one that started you is not guaranteed to be the most recent. And you need to do, there is a handler that says on intent received. Okay, I tell you these things in case you need to know them, but forget them for the homework, okay? You understand the point, right? Sometimes, so intents are done to start activities, but as we have seen with the flag clear top, sometimes the activity is not started. You simply revive an old copy of the same activity. So the start intent, the get intent method that you call in on create gives you your original intent, but it's not necessarily the most recent. And if you want to know the most recent, there is a handler that gives you the most recent intent. These are not things you need to worry about the homework, okay? But I think, if we wanted, we could do it, because we could, of course, say something like override, and then we can say protected void on in. Sorry. How does this get autocomplete? What's the method called? On intent received? Can you search a moment for an activity? It's not offering me any autocomplete. Yeah, I think I got it. No, maybe it's not on intent received. I think it's on new intent.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So you see, in Java, even if you don't know, you can sort of guess your way out. Okay, but here we don't care. We just want to get the initial intent. So I get the initial intent, and this initial intent inside has the integer that I passed from the other side, right? So I get my integer, and then I simply take a text view and I display the integer in that text view. So I'm doing something very silly. But let's check that this works, maybe, okay? So if I run this code, it takes a moment. If I run this code, we will see that it works, if I haven't destroyed it in some way in the meantime. It needs to launch the emulator, etc. Okay? Okay, so it should start by itself. Okay, so if I click on this, I see 1. Ah, very interesting. If I click here, I see 2. Okay, and so on and so forth.
Now, we didn't have to program that back button, did we?
No, the back button works automatically, but you can decide to reprogram it. So the automatic action in the back button is that it pops the activity of the stack. Okay. Now you can handle it, and I have some code that I want to recycle because I forgot exactly the way to handle it. But there is some way to say, you know, on back press, and then you can decide what to do. It's an override of an activity method. Okay, and you can decide the things that you may want to do. For example, I don't know. A typical reason that I override it is as follows. Okay, suppose you have an activity which you have multiple steps, but you have to say you launch an activity from that you go for multiple steps. But the only thing that makes sense for back to do is not to go back to the immediate previous one, but to go back to the origin. Okay, because it may not make sense to fall back in between. Then you can say on back button press, then you create an intent to start your original activity with a flag clear thought, and then you have the effect you want. It will essentially put this back on top of the stack and clear everything on top. Okay, so it's a common case. For using doing yourself, I mean for overriding the back button. Okay. So in this case, no, we don't need to do anything because the default behavior is the one we need. Okay.
So you can have it pass multiple things, maybe in that right, so you can also pass the data message.
Sorry.
On the ID.
What did you say?
You can also pass like the data as a message.
Yes. So in fact, we could do it if we wanted. Okay, it's fairly easy to do. Let us do it just as an example. For here, I can say intent put extra. Okay. Now, what is the data of the message? Okay, I forgot, but it's here because it's what I use in order to set it in the view. Is w.text label, right? Where is w defined? There. So okay, so this is not correct, unfortunately. Okay, and this is because this w is not defined by some final. Okay, so there are two solutions. Either I define it final here, because you know the point is that w could be modified. I think so. So this would be one solution, I guess, but it's not very pretty as a solution. So why does it still complain? Oh yeah, I need to say like text. I need to give it the tag. Okay, so you know this is one solution. you see, the problem is this, that W is declared in the outer class, okay? And this is instead a handler that is defined inside. Java doesn't like to do that if the variable W can possibly be modified in the outer class, okay? In this case, I can simply say in the outer class, I can say final here, okay? I can essentially promising that W, once I assign it a value, I will never change it again in that object, okay? So if I do this, then everything will work. If I think that I don't like the solution of using final, what I need to do is very simple. And in general, I do this actually myself, but I do some code like this. I say list element WW is equal to get item of IDX, I guess it would work. Okay. And then I could use a WW here. Okay, so at this point I can use W or double W, I guess, quadruple view. Okay, so these are two equivalent solutions, and I tell you only because it's very common. This situation in Java in which you want to use inside a handler a variable that you defined in the encompassing object, and so you have this issue of the final. Okay, Android Studio is kind enough to tell you what to do. Okay, so at any rate, in one of these two solutions, whatever one of the two you like, I can make a comment here so you will have it, or also w.text label, since W is final. Okay, so once we have this code, in the other activity, I get the integer. Now I can say string text is equal to start intent dot get extras get string. How did I call it? Text in this way. Yes. So okay, and now that I have these, I can say, for example, that I put the index. I just don't want to mess with the XML file now. Then a semicolon and then a txt. Okay. So now if I run this code, we should also have not only the index but also the message itself. And this will need to restart. Okay, and so it works. Okay. Any questions on these, or I want to go a bit more on these intents? Yes.
How is the homework 3 are we going to be like handling like authorized users and like actually messaging with other people?
Yeah, so there is one point I know and one point in which I actually wanted to ask you, and I want to do this maybe at the end of this last now because it's the right point to discuss it. So the point I know is this. What I've built for you is a new extended API that works as follows. If I give a message, we can say, Luca, what's the name actually? Ian. If the message is from Luca to Ian, what I get back from the server are the private messages between the two of us in either direction. If the message is from Luca and I don't cite the text or I fix it to the string public, okay, because it's a hack and I want to simplify things, then what I get back are only the public messages. So the API is clear and I make it so that it's simple to use. Okay. Now, what is not clear to me is the following. And by the way, I also have a meta question. This app is not such a bad app to develop. And so I'm wondering whether I should let some people that are not doing the official projects do this app as a project. Essentially, it will be for everybody the same app, as one of the later homeworks. Essentially, I'm simply asking, think about it and let me know whether some of you would like really to take this local chat app. The idea is that you wouldn't be necessarily working in groups. You would be working alone on it. But since the API is common, you would be all building chat clients to the same backend. So you would all be able to chat together. And we could, take it as an app, and we could see, how well we can develop it. But really developing it further, not only in homework 2 and 3, but there are more polish that we can add. So essentially, I'm wondering about the interesting people who are not doing projects about actually trying to polish these into a good app that we have at the end of class. So think about it and tell me. Now, the problem I don't know is the following. Okay, suppose I am here in the classroom and I post some public messages. Right? I give you public messages. Now, suppose Ian sees one of my public messages and chats me back. Okay? How do I know that Ian is chatting me back? And there are two ways of doing it, and I'm undecided. So one is, sheer luck. A sort of, blind find each other, essentially. That if he's interested in what I'm posting, and I happen to be interested in what he posts, we can start a conversation. But that's far too hard. Okay? Because essentially, so suppose he says, I don't know, I'm making it up. I don't know really what I'm supposed to do. But, since we are in front feed, I like apples, he says. I click on it and I send a message. I like apples too, And then he happens to be interested in my message on potatoes, and he clicks on me, and then now we can see this I like apples too. But this is very low probability, right? It's like, yeah. Exactly. So notifications would be better. Now, but I want to keep your homework very simple. Yeah. Okay. So I have the following idea for homework 3. Tell me if I'm. Now I give you this idea, then you let me know if you have better ideas. Okay. A very simple idea is this. I wanted to add one filter to the return of the public messages. So when I get the public messages in this room, there will be one filter that tells me whether the person also has privately messaged me. So essentially, you cannot talk to me by only posting private messages. You would need to post at least one public message. But so suppose I write, again, apologies, but fruit is these, or vegetables are these, perfect topic because there are a lot of them and works very well as an example. So Luca says, I say the other, okay, but Luca says potato, publicly. Ian says apple, okay, publicly. And I see, because I see what he wrote, okay. Now, he finds my Luca potato message interesting. So he clicks on it, and at this point he sees blank, because between me and him there are no private messages, okay. So this is a non-optimal UI, okay? You would need to show, if you want to make a polish that, but the public messages with some background for me, because he wants to have the context of my public messages in order to private message me probably, right? So these are, one truth is that when you develop an app is this. It's all very simple, except when you want to do it well. When you want to do it well, everything gets more complicated and very refined. But so suppose he clicks on me. Now this is blank. So this is my screen, this is Luca, and this is Ian, for instance. Okay, so this is the beginning blank because he has clicked on the private messages. Okay, now he says, I don't know, banana. Okay, so he has a message banana. Now I refresh. What do I see? My idea is that perhaps I can see to the side of the message by him a sort of green dot. This dot tells me, hey, this person that posted this public message is messaging me. So if I click on this, then I can go on my private screen, and at that point, when I click on the apple, I go to my private screen. This is Luca again, but this is Luca private, okay? This is Luca private, this was Ian private, okay? In Luca private, then because I clicked on Ian's apple, I see apple from him, and I can reply to him, and now we can converse. This is a, you know, I invented this solution for simplicity, because what does it mean for you in practice in homework 3? In homework 3 in practice, this means that when you have to define this list view has to have 3 fields. That has to be the text, the timestamp, okay, because you know, we want to timestamp of messages, and then there needs to be this optional icon, or you know, blob, or you can, I don't know, maybe you can change simply the background color of the public message to indicate whether the person chatted it back or not.
Like, so on your back end,
I mean, or maybe the best way would be to find a sort of, you know, value icon, and this is meant to be a bell, okay? But you can sort of find a bell icon that you can put on the side, so that essentially, if I chat publicly, I can see, hey, you know, this person that wrote, well, in this case, we have to be here, right? But this person that wrote Apple chatted me back, so I want to see what he wrote to me. So this has a consequence. This is where things get interesting. This means essentially that if I go in a room and he wants to chat with me, he cannot chat with me without posting publicly something. Because if he doesn't post publicly something, I will never be able to see the bell and the notification attached to it.
we don't have a user's view. I mean, we all
Yeah, but this may be advantages, right? Because we want to do this as sort of anonymous chat. So these may be advantages. Now, the point is that, is it a drawback or is it an advantage that he cannot chat me if he doesn't post something publicly? It may be a drawback because say if I post, you know, hello, then I want everybody to be able to hello me back without posting anything. But you know, maybe it's good because you avoid stalking essentially. You avoid a person lurking in the place, not posting anything publicly in order to make himself or herself visible. And that person can still instead private message to people who post publicly. Maybe that's a behavior that you don't want to encourage. Okay, so I don't know. So this is my proposal. Oh, let me do the clickers for the. By the way, before the time is over. Think if you have better proposals. That keep the homework simple. That's a challenge. Where is my attendance thing? Okay. So, any better ideas? We could do notifications, okay, but push notifications from the server, I will not implement them for this class. The reason is that in theory they are very simple. In practice, it means me mapping around for a good number of hours, obtaining the notification number, registering it with Android, and doing a lot of this stuff that really I don't want to do for this class. You can do them, it's not hard to do them. I mean, maybe if you really beg me to do it, we can do it at the end of the class, okay? But it's not conceptually hard. Let me tell you how they work. Okay, so that you know what it entails to do notifications to an app. The way it entails is this: I have to register somehow a notification key with Android, with Google. Okay. Once I have this notification key associated with my app, when I from the server send a notification, this notification will create on Android phones a broadcast intent. Okay? If you register the application to listen to the broadcast intent, it will create a notification and you can handle it in the proper way. This is roughly how it works. Okay? So it's not too difficult in code, but it's a little bit of a pain because of the various registration steps involved. I mean, maybe I'll build it at the end of class, but I don't want to build it now. So do you have any better ideas of how to notify? I mean, my idea was the following. Let me just mention this other idea. My idea was to build an app in which, in the center of screen, you have the public messages. Okay. Then, if you click on one of those, you go, and it would be nice to do it with a right moving animation. You essentially have 3 panes. Okay. So I'm the central pane. If you click on a message here that is public, boom, you go to the other pane and you have a private conversation with this person. If you take these and with a couple of fingers you swipe to the other pane in the other direction, here you see a list of all the incoming messages to me, private. Okay? And if you click on one of those, zoom you somehow again go to the place where you can privately message with that person. Okay? So this would be a sort of nice UI because you can see the public messages, you can swipe on the side and see what's private, you can swipe back to the public again. But yeah.
Also, we can be using for the private messages, like unencrypted JSON.
Yeah, unencrypted JSON is absolutely fine actually, but, because if you use HTTPS, you don't need to encrypt the JSON twice. Yeah.
Are you using HTTPS?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, the server supports it.
Can anyone view private messages with a simple GET request?
Yes and no, and that's an interesting thing. Yes, if you know the name of the other person and your name, you can get the private messages with a simple GET between you and that other person. But the point is, how do you know the names of other people? Ah, right, so there is a bug. Because if you chat with A and you chat with B, now you know A and B's names and you can request the messages between A and B. Right, so we have to close this loophole.
Isn't that basically the same thing?
Sorry?
Just do like comments on messages instead of private messages to people who posted messages? Isn't that basically, then you don't have to deal with the user, permission of the user?
Yeah, I mean, we could go through some encryption scheme, yes.
Perhaps get ready to these conversations, and once after the conversation started, you can only get that conversation.
Yeah, there are many solutions. You know, the truth is that I was building this in order to do some interesting homework, not really to do some app that is resistant to encryption. So now you know, sort of, yeah, you can snoop. Because you can snoop the private conversations. So how to prevent it?
And you could just say we don't have to, but
No, but if I wanted to prevent it, I don't know, what would be methods? I mean, it's the end of class, so vote for attendance while we brainstorm ideas. I have this half-baked idea, but I'm not sure it's a good one. The good idea, my idea would be something like this, that we could use a public-private key scheme done in the poor man's way or poor person's way. I have a bit of trouble figuring out exactly how it works, but suppose it works this way. You invent your own key. You invent your own name, but there is a hash key that enables to encrypt it, but going back is difficult. One of these things like, you know, SHA-256 or one of these hashing functions. So when how would it work? Yeah, it's a bit annoying because you would need to essentially use your private name and the other person's hash name. I'll never reveal what is your private name to anybody except the server, and then this would work, I guess, minus some details that one would have to do. So, you know, assume that Luca hashes to their file, right? Just to make it simple. Then when I talk to the server, I say post from Luca to yen hash this message. Okay, and the server tells him their firewall gave you this message, but you don't know that my unhashed name is Luca. So it would be you would not be able to request because when you want to request messages, private messages between you and another person, you need to use your private key and the public key of the other person. And so it would be useful to do, you know, to ask between any two people because you wouldn't know the private key of one of the two other people, essentially. So I think we could cook something like this. I would feel a little bit uncomfortable that, you know, one of the things in encryption is that you should not try to invent your own. And I think I'm doing exactly that, you know, I'm inventing sort of my own protocol in some way. So I must assume that there is some smarter solution.
What if you like falsify the longitude and you have like, okay, the girl can agree to like have a certain quantity so I think it's like average version like that.
Yeah, that's possible. And in fact, you know, I didn't want to go for an answer race with the attendance app, but you know, how can you do it? There are many ways to do it. For example, another way you can do it is this. Let me, in my contorted mind, start. You can check that the same wireless networks are in range. Okay, that would be a good starting point. You can get the back analysis of the Wi-Fi that are in range. Okay.
Do you want to support continuing to private message once you're outside of a certain location?
I don't know, you know, I mean, homework 3 is simple, but for the app you are asking. I think it would be more interesting, but because in that way you can essentially meet a person in some place and then continue chatting. So yeah, I mean, it could be interesting to close all. I think that closing all these solves and doing a nice app, this could be a nice app. So give some thought at whether you think it would be worth spending a little bit more time in the class, and some of you know, really fleshing out the app as your final sort of personal individual project to a common specification, because this could be a little bit of fun, I guess. Then we would have really to pay attention to security, but we could even have, you know, rather than me inventing the specs for everybody, we could have, you know, some voluntary groups, the one that looks at how to do private messaging from the security point of view, and some others on how to do some guidelines for the UI, you know, so that, you know, we distribute a little bit of the design effort across the class for the people who want to be involved. This can be fun, okay? So, yeah, so let me know, I guess, in emails after the class whether we want to do these. Let me close these.
Quick question. For the homework 2, it's okay if we did a little different from the spinner and just create a pop-up dialogue that would force